fun to look forward to Easter, isn't it? We're singing that song this month because it just reminds me so much about Easter. I love that line about, man, the roaring lion said, you got no claim on me. I am out of here. That's so awesome. I hope that song was helpful to you. You might think we have the wrong graphic up there, but we really don't. Now let me say, if you know who won the Super Bowl this year, don't say it out loud. No cheering, the game was pretty boring this year. If you knew, you might have forgotten. But anyway, but if you know, don't tell, because we may have in our presence, we may have among us some of the few remaining contestants in the Last Man contest. You guys familiar with the Last Man contest? They've done it every year for 8 or 9 years now. And I think those people who just got fed up with the hype of the Super Bowl. Anybody like that? I'm just tired of the hype of the Super Bowl. Anybody? Yeah, okay, some of you. But some people were so kind of fed up with it, they decided, you know what? Not only do I not care about the Super Bowl, but I am going to be the last person to find out who won. And it became a contest. It started about 9 years ago. They actually go online and register, like, okay, I'm in for this year. And every year, the thing is they want to see who can go, they call it the knowledge, who can go the longest without accidentally learning the knowledge, all right? So what they do is they try for as long as possible not to know. Now, as you can imagine, most people fall within the first couple days, all right? It is hard to avoid who won the Super Bowl in the first couple days. They say if you make it past about a week, then you might be safe. But it's just hard not to know. And so here's what they do. If you're in that contest, they call it dying. When you die, when you get eliminated, you got to go online and tweet out, here's when I found out, here's how I found out. Some people find out because of like push notifications on their phone. They get like, oh no. Some find out because they call mom and dad, hey, mom and dad, how's it going? Hey man, how about that game? No, don't tell me. And I know it's silly and I know it's ridiculous, but so far this year, there are still some people in. They haven't posted the results yet. There are still some people in. Last year, most of the people, I think the last one that they recorded was like April something, they found out who won the Super Bowl because somebody commented on TV show or whatever. Now, you may not get that. You may be like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's the strangest thing I've ever heard. But I bet everybody in this room about something wanted to make sure you did not know the end, right? Maybe it was a book you were reading and somebody started talking about that. Oh, I love the ending because no. Don't tell me how it ends, right? Or maybe you want to go see a movie and they're like, oh, the ending is so great with it. No. I don't want to know how it ends. Anybody have anything like that? A few of you? Okay, a few of you. How about sports? Some of you guys are into sports. Don't you hate it when you record something? And like the whole day you just spend trying to not find out who won, right? I'm a Hawkeye football fan. I know it's not popular, but I'm far enough away from you that you can't reach me from where you are. But it used to be, man, I would record every single game. And then if I couldn't watch it live, I'd record it and I'd wait to watch it that night. But you had to be careful because you hop in the car, you turn on the radio, and they're like, man, no. Turn it off. I don't want to know the end. I don't know how it ended up. But you got to be careful because even I go walk into a store with an Iowa Hawkeye shirt on or something, and somebody go, hey, man, how about the Hawks today? And I'm like, no, I know what that means. You try so hard not to know the end of the story. But there's other times in our life when we'd love to know the end of the story. There's some times in our life we love to know the end of the story. We want to know how things are going to turn out. Maybe you're having a rough run with your kids, right? Sometimes your kids are angels. They're wonderful. They're perfect. They're charming. They're obedient. It's fantastic. And then they're not, right? And even though their teachers still keep saying, your child is just the sweetest person I've ever met, you're like, I think you have the wrong name. Is there maybe somebody else? Maybe you got me confused with the last parent, right? But sometimes you're going through a rough run with one of your kids, and wouldn't you love to know how it's going to turn out? Is everything going to be okay in the end or not? Sometimes things get unsettled at work, right? Job gets weird. You start getting a weird vibe about things. You're like, how's this going to turn out? Right? Am I going to be okay or not? Sometimes relationships are that way, right? Things get weird in a relationship. You're like, man, I don't know if this is going to make it or not. And you'd love to know the end of the story. But here's my point this morning. We're starting a new series this morning talking about how do we live by faith in the middle of the story? Because that's the only place we can find it. None of us are at the end of the story, right? We're all in the middle of our story. We're all in the center of what's going on. We all have things in the future. We don't know how it's going to pan out. We don't know where it's going to go. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know how things are going to work out. Now, we know the ultimate end of the story. If you're a believer in Christ, and I hope you are, if you're not, you need to put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, because then you know the end of the story, which is good news. But we don't know how the rest of this life shakes out. We don't know where things are going to go. And that's what I want to talk to you about, because I want to think about the people in the Bible. You know, it just seems like, I don't know, man, the older I got, the more and more real they seem to me. You know what I mean? I used to read them as almost like a storybook. It's almost like they seem like characters in a storybook or on a flannel graph board, right? They were stories, right? Noah was called by God, and then Noah was going to build the ark, and then it flooded, and then he survived. And, you know, we kind of knew the story. But I just want to get your mind, I hope I'm making sense this morning. I want to get your mind stuck in the middle of the story. We don't think of them that way. We just think of, oh yeah, but everything turned out okay. Yeah, but in the end, but they didn't know that. They had to live in the middle of their story. And in the middle of their story, they had to decide, when I get up today and I get dressed and I eat breakfast, is today going to be a day I live by faith, even though I don't know what's happening tomorrow? Even though I don't know what's happening next week? Think about some of the people. Think about Moses' mom, when she had this little baby. And according to the authorities, she was supposed to kill that baby. But she's hiding that little baby, and then she puts him in that little basket. You know the story. She puts him in that little basket, puts him out of the water. She's living by faith in the middle of her story. Hebrews talks about the faith that she had and how she handled that situation. Think about Sarah, Abraham's wife. When she's 89 years old and she's waiting to become pregnant. What? She had to live by faith in the middle of that story. Think about Joshua leading an army, right? Again, we know the story, but I'm encouraging you, don't just jump to the end of the story. Think about Joshua every day getting up and leading that army. The army today saying, are we attacking Jericho today? No, we're going to walk around it again. We're going to walk around it again? No, I mean, we look ridiculous. Yeah, well, that's what we're going to do. God told us to do it. Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, but we're going to live by faith today. And we're going to walk around that city one more time. And what are we going to do tomorrow? Well, we're going to walk around it again. But see, he had to live by faith in the middle of the story. He didn't have the end totally spelled out for him. Think about Paul writing letters from prison. From there, we don't have it in the scriptures, but tradition tells us that he was executed after that. But Paul writing those letters from prison, living by faith in the middle of the story. Am I being too redundant for you? I want to get our minds in a place where we say, those people were just like us. Those people were people who had temptations. Those people were people who had frustrations. Those people were people that didn't know the end. We know the end of their story. We look at it, we go, it's different for me because you don't understand. I don't know what's happening next week. I don't know what's happening next year. Neither did they. And yet they chose to live by faith. And my challenge to us is, can we do that too? Will we say, in the middle of the story, without God having to spell out the end for me, I'm going to choose to live by faith in the middle of this story. Today, our message is this: faith can spoil the power of uncertainty. I want to look with you at a time in David's life when things seem very uncertain for him. Go ahead and open your Bibles if you would to Psalm 63. Psalm 63, 63rd Psalm. This is a song that David wrote, Psalm 63. This is a song that David wrote about the Lord at a time when the wheels kind of came off in his life. When he went from things seeming very certain, very stable, very sure, and then they became, humanly speaking, they seem to become very unstable, very uncertain. And right in the middle of that, he writes this psalm, and we'll read it here in just a few minutes. But before we get there, I invite you back just in your mind, and I know this is a pretty commonly known person in the Bible. I want you to think back through some of the big scenes in David's life. Think about, probably the first time we meet David, he's a young man, probably a teenager. He's being anointed by Samuel, right? Saying, you're going to be the next king. Imagine taking that in as a kid, right? Well, I'm going to be... So this little private ceremony, me and this guy I just met, and he's telling me I'm going to be the next king of Israel. It's not going to happen for a long time, but that's where we see his story start. And then we see him serving King Saul as the armor bearer. And we see him serving him as a musician, right? When Saul's spirit would get all agitated, he would come in and play the harp for him and try to calm him down and soothe him. Soon after that, we see him in probably the most famous story when he goes up against Goliath, right? He defeats Goliath, this huge story, right? Everybody else is scared to fight. He goes, I'll fight it, not because he thought he was something, but because he knew God was something. And he went out there and he fought Goliath in the strength of God. He defeated Goliath. Such a huge victory, and that just launches David in front of nobody onto the national stage. He is a national hero. Everybody knows his name. Everybody's chanting for him. So much so that Saul is starting to say, wait a minute. How come everybody loves that kid more than they love me? And he begins to get envious. He begins to get jealous. Pretty soon, he starts trying to set David up to get killed in battle. Remember those stories? Unfortunately, it backfired. David would go out against impossible odds because Saul thought, well, if I send him out there and then he gets killed in battle, we can all, oh, poor David is gone. Okay, on to the next thing. But it didn't happen. Against impossible odds, God blessed David, and David was successful. Saul didn't see that coming, and now David even grows bigger in the minds of the people. And Saul gets more envious and more jealous. You know how the story goes. Then Saul and his army start chasing David around. Pretty soon David is fleeing from Saul all over the place. What a mess. But all the time in the back of his mind, he's going, but someday I'm going to be the king. Someday God said I'm going to be the king. Well, eventually that happens, right? Saul gets into a battle with the Philistines. Saul dies. The people anoint David as the new king of Israel. And it kind of seems like at that point of the story, that might be a nice place for, and they all lived happily ever after, right? The end of the story. All of God's promises have come true. David is at peace. You know, he's become powerful enough that his enemies aren't attacking anymore. So he's at rest with his enemies. Everything's good. He's in the palace. That would have been a nice place for his story to go. That's a nice ending. But that's not the ending, because you remember after that, then he has the affair with Bathsheba. And after the affair with Bathsheba, she becomes pregnant. And that, just gets worse and worse. And well, now what do? I got to get rid of her husband. So he gets her husband Uriah killed. Remember, what a shameful time in David's life. And after that happened, if you remember, then God sent a prophet to David. God sent a prophet to confront David about what he had done. And, I want to read these verses to you. I think we'll have them up on the screen, so you don't need to turn there if you don't want to. I'm going to read to you from 2 Samuel chapter 15. Here's what it says. I'm sorry, before I get to that, let me mention this. I lost track of my notes here. God sends David a prophet to warn David of the consequences, but this was part of the promise. The sword shall never depart from your house. I will raise up evil against you out of your own house. So David's story now he's got this warning looming over him. What's going to happen? Right? Out in your own house, there will be a problem. And then the problem developed. That's what we see here in 2 Samuel 15. Here's what it says. After this, Absalom, that's David's son, Absalom got himself a chariot and horses and 50 men to run before him. Pause for a second. What's that about? That's about making himself look important. If you have 50 people running before you, that means here's a very big, it's having your entourage, right? This is a very important person coming, and I've got my chariot, right? Look at verse 2. And Absalom used to rise early, and he would stand beside the way of the gate. And when any man had a dispute to come before the king for judgment, for his dad, David, Absalom would call to him and say, hey, from what city are you? And when he said, well, your servant's from such and such a tribe in Israel, Absalom would say to him, see, your claims are good and right. One of the most powerful things you can say to somebody is, man, I agree with you. You are right. Whoever you're, man, they are wrong. I'm on your side. You're right. Your claim is good and right. And he says, but, sadly, right, there's no man designated by the king to hear you. Boy, it's too bad my dad doesn't do a better job. It's too bad my dad is the king. I wish he had people to take care of disputes like yours, but boy, there's just nobody available for that kind of thing. And then it says that Absalom would say, oh, that I were the judge in the land. And then every man with a dispute or cause might come to me, and I would give him justice. See what he's doing? Man, it's too bad my dad's in charge, because he just doesn't handle this right. Boy, if I was in charge. If I was in charge, you wouldn't have any problems anymore, because you just come to me and I'd solve it for everything and be great. And here's how it goes on in verse 5. It says, and whenever a man came near to pay homage to him, he would put out his hand and take hold of him and kiss him. Again, I don't want to exaggerate much right here, but here's what I think that's saying. I think it's saying when someone would come to this royalty, right? He's the prince. He's royalty. And when someone would come and extend his hand, Absalom would say, no, come here. And he'd give him a hug and kiss on the cheek, right? Come on, man, we're buddies. And so notice what he's doing, and it's described then in verse 6. It says, thus Absalom did to all of Israel who came to the king for judgment. So Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. See what he did? He's sneaking in. Boy, my dad, I love my dad, but boy, I think I could do such a better job than him. I could really help you out. And we're buddies, we're friends. You're right, I'm on your side. Boy, it's too bad I'm not in charge, because if I was in charge, things would be a lot different around here. So he steals the hearts of the people, is how it describes it here. So Absalom convinced enough people to dethrone David. David now, again, we're kind of skipping through the story, but after this happens, enough people began to follow Absalom. Pretty soon David is in. David's like, I got to get out of here. David flees the palace. He flees the capital city. He runs off into the wilderness to hide out. So here's the picture. David and his people hiding in the desert. Absalom has overtaken the capital city and the palace. Absalom and his army start. Imagine this. You are now in charge of the army, and you're hunting down your dad, trying to make sure if he's dead, then I'm the king for good. Now, David doesn't know what's going to happen. This is all introductory, believe it or not. David doesn't know what's going to happen next. And again, I know I keep saying this, but I want you to get this mindset. David is in the middle of his story. You might know how it is, but he doesn't know how it is. All he knows is, I'm hiding out, and my life, which at one time seemed very stable and very certain. I sat on a throne. I had power and authority. My enemies didn't even come after me anymore. I was settled. I was safe. I was secure. I was set for the rest of my life. And now this has happened, and everything seems uncertain. What happens next? Will I ever be the king again? Will I ever go back in the capital city again? Will I ever go back into Jerusalem? Will I ever enter the palace again? Will I even survive? What's going to happen next? It's interesting to get David's mindset on this a little bit, because during that time, the Levites, remember the Levites were the priestly tribe, right? The priests began to follow David out. You're the king, we're with you. And they grabbed the Ark of God, right? And understand, the Ark of God, remember, represented the presence of God. So the priests, by grabbing the Ark of God and beginning to follow David, here's what they were saying. They were saying, David, God's on your side, and we're on your side. And David could have used that. David could have manipulated that. David just said, that's right, God's on my side. But let me read to you what David said instead. This is in 2 Samuel 15 in verse 25. David said, it says, then the king said to Zadok, the priest, carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back, and let me see both it and his dwelling place. But if he says, I have no pleasure in you, behold, here I am. Let him do to me what seems good to him. Catch David's spirit. In a time of uncertainty, he's saying, you know what? I guess we'll just have to see what God's going to do. Maybe God's going to bring me back there. Maybe he's not. Maybe I'll be restored as the king on the throne. Maybe I won't. I don't know what God's going to do. But I'm not going to drag God with me and say, well, as long as I have this golden box, that God's on my side. No. He said, you know what? Let the ark stay in the palace. Let the ark stay in the capital city is what I meant to say. And if God wants to bring me back and restore me, that's awesome. If God doesn't, well, it's up to him. It's not up to me. It's up to God. So I love we see David here living by faith in the middle of this story. So David doesn't know what's going to happen. He doesn't know how things are going to find out. And that's all introductory. That's when he writes this psalm. So this is the context of this psalm. So look with me at Psalm 63. David wrote this, O God, you are my God. Earnestly I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh faints for you, as in a dry and weary land where there is no water. So I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and glory, because your steadfast love is better than life. My lips will praise you. So I will bless you as long as I live. In your name I will lift up my hands. My soul will be satisfied as with fat and rich food, and my mouth will praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you upon my bed and meditate on you in the watches of the night, for you've been my help. And in the shadow of your wings I will sing for joy. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. But those who seek to destroy my life shall go down into the depths of the earth. They shall be given over to the power of the sword. They shall be a portion for jackals. But the king shall rejoice in God. All who swear by him shall exult, for the mouths of liars will be stopped. So in this psalm, David gives us at least four. We're going to look at four different principles about how do you live by faith in a time of uncertainty. Because I feel like I'm already being a little heavy this morning. I'm going to say this even though our risk being a little heavier. We're always in the time of uncertainty. It's just sometimes we don't know it. Sometimes we don't feel it. But sometimes everything seems good, right? Sometimes we can tell it's uncertain. Sometimes we feel certain, but things can change in a moment. So whether you're in a time of uncertainty or not, or you think you're not, but you might be, we're always in the time of uncertainty. So in a time of uncertainty, how does faith respond to God in a time of uncertainty? There's 4 things I want to show you from David's psalm here. The first one is this. In a time of uncertainty, faith seeks God. Faith seeks after God. You know, we have different reactions when things don't go the way that we wish they would. When we lose a job that we love, my daughter this last week, she's getting married in June. She's trying to find an apartment in Cedarville, and it was this, it was a big deal. Get married, we got to have a place to live. There's not a lot of places in Cedarville. What are we going to do? What if we don't get the apartment? And again, I know it's easy for me because I got a place to live. But I try to encourage her and say, you know what, babe, if that doesn't happen, something else will happen. Someday you'll look back and see what God did. But in a time of uncertainty, it's so easy to just grasp on different things. But when you don't get the apartment that you wanted, when you don't get the scholarship you thought you should have, when somebody treats you in a way that you don't think is fair, when you didn't get the house you put a bid in, whatever it is, it's easy when things don't go the way you wish they would have gone. It's easy in those times of uncertainty to distance yourself from God. It's easy in those times to say, well, God really let me down. It's easy in those times to kind of push away from Him. But it's interesting to me that when David's world fell apart, he had the opposite reaction. He said, in this time of uncertainty, I'm going to seek after God. He starts out this psalm with, oh God, you are my God. It's easy, I think, for us to put our security and our hope in other things. It's easier for us to put it in relationships. It's easy for us to put it in bank accounts. As long as I got enough money in the bank, I'm going to be okay. It's easy for us to put our certainty in a job or a position or a person. Or even our health, right? Well, as long as you got your health, right? It's easy for us to put our hope in other things and to seek other things that make us feel safe and secure. But David said, when I'm in a time of uncertainty, I'm going to seek after God. He is where I put my faith. He is what I need in my life because He is the certainty. Nothing else is. It reminds me of, how many of you have played the game Frogger? You guys know the Frogger game? All right. So, for those of you who don't know Frogger, let me try to explain this to you. So you're a frog, okay, in this game. And this is very deep and spiritual. There's a point. So you're a frog, and first you have to hop past about 4 lanes of highway. Then you get to ground. Made it this far. This is a video game, if I didn't make that clear. And then after that, there's a river, right? You got to cross the river to get safely to the other side. So when you're hopping across the river, you're hopping on a log going this way, then you hop on a log going that way, then you hop on a log, and then you got to jump to the end, and then you've made it, right? You tell I played too many video games in my teen years. So you're hopping across. Sometimes when you get to the river part, you hop on something, and you think it's a log, and it starts to sink. Right? Am I bringing back memories to some of you? You hop on the log, and then it starts sinking, and there's nothing else to jump on. You're like, oh, no, I gotta go. And there's nowhere to go. And it goes, right? Shows the horrible symbol, and you're done. I tell you that silly illustration to say this. There are a lot of times in our lives, we hop on things for certainty that when they sink on us, because they will, when they sink on us, right? God is the only thing we have that will always be certain. He is, when the job is uncertain, when my health is uncertain, when the money, when the market downturns, oh, I've been saving for retirement, I knew that money was there, now it's not there. When everything else is uncertain, He is certain. And that's why David, in a time of uncertainty, says, I'm going to seek God. What am I going to seek? I'm not seeking my throne back. I'm not seeking my money back. I'm not seeking my power back. In a time of uncertainty, David says, I'm going to seek after God. And notice the pictures he paints here. The first picture he paints, he says in verse 1, he says, I'm like a thirsty man looking for water. He goes, that's what God does for me. God is like refreshing water to us. And again, he gets this picture from, I think, the setting he's in. He's out in the wilderness. It's a dry, arid place. And he goes, man, it's just so great. When you come across that stream and you drink it, it's so refreshing. He goes, that's what God does for me. I remember, I told you about RAGBRAI before, in case you weren't here that Sunday. RAGBRAI is a bike ride across Iowa. It was about 70 miles a day, 60, 70 miles a day. You do a couple hundred, 250, I think, miles in a week. And there's times that you're just biking, especially on a hot day, you're biking. Every single town, they had a place with water. And then the crazy, I love Pepsi, all right? But there's some, when you're really thirsty, I don't want Pepsi. I just want water, just water. And every town you would come into, they would always say, every single town, and you could tell where it was because there was always a huge crowd around it. There would be a water pipe that would come out, and then they usually, the way they would do it, they would then extend it with a PVC pipe, and they would drill holes all around that PVC pipe. So it was just constant, just water squirting out every side of this thing. And there were always people around it. Why? Because, man, they're hot, they're thirsty, it's dry, their throat's parched, and they come just filling up their water bottles. They would come with several bottles of water, fill them all up, put them back in their bike. Why? Because when you're thirsty, the only thing that will satisfy you is water. And that's the picture David's painting here. He says, God, in a time of uncertainty, there's nothing else I need but you. You are like water to me when I'm thirsty. And the second picture he paints, and I like this even more, look down at verse 5. He said, my soul will be satisfied as with fat and rich food. Now, maybe you are a healthy person, and I am not. All right, I'm just telling you, as your pastor, I am not a healthy person as I should be. But I look at that and I go, oh yes, it's in the Bible right there that I can be satisfied with fat and rich food. Isn't that a great verse? That's my new life verse. I like that. But notice the point here he's saying. He's saying, God, you're like a banquet to me. You are satisfying to me. Like when I go in, I sit down, we hadn't bought one for a long time, but Grace and I, we got steaks the other day. I used to think I didn't like steak. When I was growing up, when I was growing up, I never, and I think it's because we were poor, and we always had cheap steaks. And cheap steaks. That's not cheap steak. Okay, cheap steaks. Here's what I remember about steaks as a kid. What I remember about steaks as a kid is you put a bite of steak in your mouth, and then you spend about half an hour going. And I just couldn't think, why does anybody think this is good? You know what I mean? It's like gum. You know what I mean? That had no flavor. And then you drown it in A1 sauce and try to get it down your throat, right? I met a butcher in my last church, this is years ago, and he said, hey man, we'll have you guys come over. And he goes, I'll make some steaks. And I'm like, oh no. and again, I tend to be a pretty transparent person. I mean, I didn't try to do this, but apparently something came across my face, and he goes, you don't like steaks? And I told him what I just told you. I said, man, I don't know. I just don't. I've never, He said, again, this is a butcher, all right? He says, you've never had a good steak, right? You've never had a good steak. That's the problem. I'm like, oh. So here's the thing. I am dreading going to his house. Because I'm going, he's going to make me a steak. He's going to think it's delicious. I'm going to have to chew it. And I either have to lie or maybe by some miracle this will actually be good, right? And this is what goes through my mind as a weird person. So I go to his house. He's making the stuff, small talk, getting to know each other, good time. Then he throws that steak on my plate, and I'm like, oh, here we go. And I cut it by, and it's put in my mouth. What? This is like the greatest thing I've ever tasted in my life. How did this happen, right? That's the idea here. Rich and fat food. That's what he's saying. But notice who he's saying it of. He's saying, God, it's you. You. When I'm connected with you, I find in you not only like the satisfaction of my thirst, but God, you are like a banquet to me. I am satisfied in you. That's the second picture. So notice again, David didn't say, I'll be satisfied when you restore my kingship. God, when you put me back in power, I'll be satisfied. That's not what he said. He said, God, right now, in the middle of the wilderness, where I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, I'm going to be satisfied in you. Man, I think this is like graduate level stuff here for Christians, isn't it? It's easy for us to come to God and say, God, I love you as long as you're good to me, but when you're not good to me, I don't know what to do. This is, God, when things don't make any sense to me, when things seem very uncertain, I'm going to choose to be satisfied in you. That's what David says. That's what faith does. But here's the second thought. The second thought is this. In the time of uncertainty, faith praises God. Faith praises God. We see this in verse 2 through 4. Let me read those again. He says, so I have looked upon you in the sanctuary, beholding your power and your glory, because your steadfast love. Stop there for a moment. Your steadfast love. He's saying, God loves me even right now. God loves me while I'm in the wilderness. God loves me while I'm on the run. God loves me when I'm away from my throne and when my future is in jeopardy. He said, even there he says, God, your steadfast love, and it's better than life. So my lips will praise you. I will bless you as long as I live. In your name I lift up my hands. Again, to me, reading the psalm in the context of what was going on is so much different than just reading it by itself. To understand David was writing this in the situation that he was in. My lips shall praise you. There are times we can be uncertain about a lot of things, but through the eyes of faith, we can always be certain we have a God who loves us. We can always be certain we have a God who's powerful. We can always be certain we have a God who deserves our praise and our glory. He deserves that even when we're a time that doesn't make sense to us. We always have reason to praise Him. Here's the third thought. Third thought is this. David shows us in a time of uncertainty, faith, and this is so important, faith remembers what God has done. He remembers what God has done in the past. Look at verse 6 and 7. When I remember you upon my bed and I meditate on you in the watches of the night, for you have been my help. And in the shadow of your wings I will sing for joy. You have been my help. He remembers. Sometimes we get in a spot where the thing that's going, again, I know I'm talking about uncertainty today. When we're in a time of uncertainty, isn't it easy to feel like, this is how things have always been, this is how things will always be, things will never get better, I don't see any resolution, I don't know what's, there's something about being down, there's something about being in a difficulty where it can just consume you and you forget the goodness of the past. And that robs you of the hope of the future. But here David says, you know what, I'm going to remember you. I'm going to remember what you've done in the past. And let me ask you this, have you ever had those times of sleeplessness because you're just worried about something? I have. I've had those times, that's what he's talking about, in the watches of the night, at the end of verse 6. In the watches of the night. That means, man, maybe it's 2 to 3 in the morning, maybe it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you just wake up and this thing that you're worried about is on your mind. How's this going to go? How's this going to turn out? What's going to happen? And you just lay there worrying, wondering, thinking about it, just going over in your head. You just can't figure out, is there any good solution to this? I don't see anything. I don't know what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen. But notice what David did when he didn't know what's going to happen. He didn't meditate on what was wrong. He meditated on God and what God had done before. What a great idea, right? I don't know what you do when you're sleepless. When you're laying there sleepless because you're just anxious about something. I've tried different things. I tried to just get up and give up sleeping. You ever done that? I guess I'm not going to go to sleep. I'm going to watch TV, right? It's a valuable waste of your time. I'll go do that. It's 2:30 in the morning. Oh, good. Well, let me go watch some Hulu, right? Let me go and see what's on. Sometimes I've taken sleeping pills. Ever done that? I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying, I'm going to knock myself out because otherwise I'm just going to lay here worried all night. There have been times when I put headphones in, right? Listen to some music or talk or something, just to think about something else besides what I'm thinking about. I put those in and I wake up an hour later and I'm all tangled up in cords and, my dreams about people attacking me. But notice what David did. David said, when I'm sleepless, and again, I don't know how else to take in the watches of the night. When I'm awake in the middle of the night, I'm just, you know what? I'm going to choose to think about you. God, I'm going to choose to think about who you are and what you've done. Think about all the things David had to reflect on. David could look back and go, oh man, God, I remember that time when that lion came in. I mean, isn't that a crazy story? Wouldn't you love that was your story? Now, none of us wants to get attacked by a lion, but wouldn't it be cool if you could say, yeah, I was attacked by a lion, but I won. How cool is that? David could say that. And he could say, you know what? I couldn't do that. God did that. God, I remember that time that lion came after me and you helped me beat the lion. God remember that time that bear came after me and I beat the bear. And then that time I faced Goliath. And God, I didn't beat Goliath. You beat Goliath. David is not the hero in the David and Goliath story. God is the hero in the David and Goliath story. And David could say, God, I remember that when I stood out there in front of all those people and they're all watching. I'm just this little punk kid waving my slingshot around and you beat that giant for me. And God, all the times when Saul was chasing me around, God, you delivered me. And so what he did at night, he lay there and he meditated on God. He thought about God. God, here's what you've done for me in the past. In a time of uncertainty, faith remembers what God has done. Spends time, and again, let me spend one moment talking about that word meditate. What does that mean? Do we meditate? Is it okay for Christians to meditate? Probably not like that, right? All meditate means is you just focus your mind on something over and over again. And here's the truth. You already know how to meditate because you meditate every time you worry about something. Me too. When we're worrying about something, you know how that is? It just runs in your mind over and over. You think about it, you think about it, you think about it. You know what you're doing? You're meditating on it. But here's what I love about David. David said, I'm not going to meditate on my problem. I'm going to meditate on God. I'm going to meditate on Him and what He's done and who He's been to me. That's what I'm going to meditate on. That's what I'm going to focus on. And let me show you this picture that he, at the end of verse 7, look at that, the word picture he uses. In the shadow of your wings. In the shadow, the Bible uses this term several times in our relationship with God. In the shadow of your wings. And I don't mean to be lovey-dovey or soft, whatever. But I love these pictures because I especially love that one on the top on the right, because it looks like one bird with 12 legs. You know, it's a weird looking picture. I've never seen that breed. What is that? That's in the shadow of your wings. That's all those little babies snuggling up to mom and going, okay, I'm safe because I'm with you. It doesn't matter where that picture was taken. It doesn't matter where they are. What matters is, I'm with you, so I'm okay. Because I'm under the shadow of your wings. And that's what David says about God. God, I know I'm out in the wilderness. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's okay. Because I'm with you. And I am under the shadow of your wings. I'm going to tuck in underneath. I'm going to slide there and let your wings cover over me. And I'm going to be okay. Because I'm with you. And not only does he say, I'm with you, but he says at the end of that verse, in the shadow of your wings, I will sing for joy. I can be joyful in this time of uncertainty. Because I'm with you. Faith remembers what God has done. Here's the fourth one, the last one. In a time of uncertainty, and maybe this was just super obvious, but in the times of uncertainty, faith trusts God. Faith chooses to say, God, I'm going to depend on you. Right? We see it in verse 8. It says in verse 8, my soul clings to you, and your right hand upholds me. David trusts God to uphold him. To say, God, your arm is what I'm going to grab onto. You're what I'm going to, and I love that he says, sorry if you're left-handed in here, but in verse 8 where it says, your right hand upholds me, what's he saying right hand for? Because the idea is the right hand is the strong hand. God, I'm going to come to you, and I believe that your strength is going to uphold me. Your strength is going to lift me up. I don't have to depend on myself. I don't have to depend on the situation. It is your strength that will uphold me and lift me up. Your strength will uphold me. But what I like is he goes on to say, not only do I trust you with me, I trust you with everybody else. We talked about this a little bit last week, so I won't belabor it, but I do want to mention it because it's in the passage. Because he goes on and he says, like in verse 9, but to those who seek to destroy my life shall go down into the depths of the earth. They shall be given of the power of the sword. They shall be a portion for Jack. Well, what's he saying all those things? He's saying, God, you know what? That stuff's going to happen, but that's you. You're going to do that stuff. I'm going to trust you with the enemies. And I'm going to trust you with myself. In this time of uncertainty, I don't know all the pieces. I don't know what's going to happen with Absalom. I don't know what's going to happen with his army. I don't know if I'm ever going to get to go home. I don't know. But I know you, and I'm going to trust you to uphold me right now. I need you to be my strength right now. And again, notice here, he's not just looking for the answer. He's saying, God, I just look to you to uphold me in this time of uncertainty. David, like I said, David had an interesting way of dealing with his enemies. We see it kind of spelled out here. But remember, even with Saul, when Saul's army, this is before he became king. Remember when Saul's army always chased David around? Even then, David never took it. When he could have killed Saul, he never did. There are two times specifically mentioned in Scripture. One, and this is one that junior boys always like the story. Remember the story where King Saul went into the cave to go to the bathroom, right? You say go to the bathroom, all fifth grade boys go, yeah, right? So you can do that too if you'd like, right? You can be a young heart. But that's the funny thing, right? It's so ironic. It's such an interesting situation that David and all his men are in this cave, at the back of this cave, and in comes Saul to go to the bathroom of all things. And so it's the only time he's not protected. It's the only time he's just all by himself, completely exposed, forgive the expression. And he comes in there all by himself, and David's men are saying, hey man, this is it. This is your chance. God, and they blame it on God. God has delivered him into your hands. God wants you to kill him right now. David said, no, not me. I'm not killing him because he's the king. God's going to move him out of the way when it's time. Another time, remember Saul and his men were all sleeping in a campground kind of situation? And somebody's supposed to be up watching out overnight, making sure no enemies approach. And that person had fallen asleep. So David goes tiptoeing into that campground. And he picks up a couple things that were laying beside Saul. And then he walks out of that campground. And when he gets far enough away, he goes, hey guys, wake up! I'm paraphrasing. But he says, where'd these come from? And now everybody's in a tizzy, right? Oh my goodness, how did he was here? And they start thinking about what could have happened, what he could have. Man, David could have killed the king. He could have. But he didn't. And that's David's point. I could have killed you just now, and I did. I am not your enemy. That's how David treated those who made themselves his enemy. He said, look, it's not my place to get rid of you. Because God's going to move you when it's time. And that's what David says here. He says, look, you know what? I'm going to trust God to take care of my enemies. And I'm going to trust God to take care of me. So let's go ahead and jump to the end of the story. How did David's story end? In the end of the story, Absalom's army was defeated. Absalom himself was killed. That's an interesting story. You should look that up if you're not familiar with it. David was grief-stricken. Isn't it crazy? You win the war, but you're grief-stricken. Why? Because it was his son. No good ending to that story. In a way, it was a bad ending for David, even though his son had rebelled against him. Then the people of Judah welcomed him back. He got restored, right? Back to the capital city, back to the throne. And he ends up being the king there until he was 70 years old. And at 70 years old, then he passes the kingdom on to his son, Solomon. So that's how the story ended. But there are chapters in our lives where things seem uncertain, right? And those times of uncertainty, I think, really show us where our hope lies, where our trust lies. In times of uncertainty, and again, I almost want to apologize to you guys when I feel like it's been a little heavy. I feel a little bit this morning. But let's be honest about it. There are times of uncertainty. There are times we just go, I don't know how this is going to work out. But if we can't trust in God in a time of uncertainty, then we're really not trusting God that much in a time of certainty. That's the truth. If I'm not trusting Him when I can't figure out how all pieces go together, well, then I'm really not trusting Him when I do see how the pieces go together. I'm trusting something else. I'm trusting myself. I'm trusting the situation. I'm trusting my job, like I said earlier. Trusting a relationship, trusting a bank account. I'm trusting something else because when that thing goes away, well, now I panic. But if I put myself completely in God's hands, if I say, God, you are my certainty. In a time of uncertainty, you are my certainty. So all the other things, if they frogger away from me, I'm going to be okay. Because I'm never hopping on the wrong thing. I'm never standing on the wrong. I'm never completely relying on something undependable. Now, please, as I say, let me just to be sure I'm communicating correctly. I'm not saying you shouldn't try to have strong, secure relationships. You should. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some money in your bank account. You should. I'm not saying you shouldn't work hard at your job and try to get yourself in a secure position. You should. But I'm also saying that as we do those things, our ultimate faith and hope is not in any of those things. Our ultimate faith and hope is in Him. So then there really is no time of uncertainty because He's got us. We're resting on Him. We're trusting in Him. And even when everything else seems uncertain, He's certain. And so we know that we're okay. I choose Him. Faith has the power. It really does. If you are a person of faith, faith has the power to destroy uncertainty. Because you always have the certainty of the God who loves you and who's working things out for you. Amen.